you for coming, this wonderful group. We're at capacity for this wonderful program. I just want to tell you that our Twilight Talks, this is our last for this season, but join us next year. We will be back for another 4 or 5 programs. We're thrilled to have the history of Periwinkle Park with us tonight, and we're thrilled to have all of you. And in our audience, we also have our donors. If it were not for the donors to the historical village, we could not present these wonderful programs. So to our anonymous donors, many thanks, please. So my name is Ellen O'Neill, and I'm with the village and a docent, and this is Gail Garlinghouse, and she is going to introduce our speakers for the evening. We're going to do a format where she and I are going to sort of moderate some questions, and the guys told me it was okay, we could cut them off and then keep moving on, but our plan is that we will have the program last till about 8:15, and then we will take Q&A until 8:30. We normally end our programs around 8:30. That doesn't mean that we have to stop, however. It just means the formal program will stop, and we encourage all of the visitors to come forward with their questions if they haven't been answered and chat with this wonderful Munch family. Gail.
It is my pleasure to introduce to you tonight the Munch family. Dick, Emily, Jerry, and June. I have to tell you a funny little story here, because about 2 years ago, I was walking down Periwinkle. Were you going to tell it? June may be planning to tell it too, but anyway, we were walking down the sidewalk, the bike path, and June and I ran into each other and began talking. June and I graduated from high school together in upstate New York. Jerry was a couple years ahead of us, I think, and went 1 year ahead and graduated from the same high school, as did Dick.
2 years.
2 years. Emily was from another town close to us, a rival. A rival school. But anyway, it is my pleasure to have them here tonight. They are going to tell you how they got here, when they got here, and all their wonderful stories of how the park came into being and what life was like back in the late 60s and the 70s and all the time since, because they've made a wonderful contribution to this island, and we are very happy to have them here tonight. Please welcome them.
Can you hear me okay? Well, I've been chosen to start it off, and basically, I want you to dream of the past when you were 18 years old, because that's when my parents, Al and Betty, came down to Florida with a very small trailer with my younger sister and brother. My brother Steve and I was a freshman at Syracuse University, and Steve was a sophomore at Lemoyne University, and brother Dick was in the Navy. Okay? So, Dad and Mom had never been in an RV before, a little trailer. So, we stayed back, and they came down to Florida and ended up on Sanibel. When they got here, okay, there was a very small RV park. Unfortunately, the lady that owned it did not like children, so they couldn't stay. She didn't allow kids. So they had to go over to Fort Myers Beach, and they stayed over at a place called the Red Coconut, which is still there also. Okay. So they enjoyed their time down here, and it was time to come home. Now, Missy, the little girl that you saw in the picture up there, she's 10 years old at the time. They're driving back up on 95, and they're talking about the vacation. And Missy said to Dad and Mother, "Why don't you build a trailer park on Sanibel?" That's how it started. So when they got home, okay, a real estate agent called Dad from Priscilla Murphy's Real Estate. His name was Roy Bazier. Right, Roy Bazier. And he said, well, we have 16 acres that are for sale. There's his own trailer park. Why don't you come back down? So Dad gets back in his car, goes right back down to Florida. Okay, he was in construction. He had never built anything like this, an RV park. So I mean, he's coming back down, and he purchased the original 16 acres. So then he comes back up, and he said, well, can I and my brother come down and help him start it after the semester of school? So that was in June of 1964. As you remember, the causeway opened, the original causeway, in August of 1963. So Steve and I jumped in our car and we headed for Florida. And we got down to Fort Myers and ended up going down a one-way street. We got lost. So we're coming out McGregor, which was a very small two-lane road, coming out to Sanibel. I mean, we're going, what did we get ourselves into? So we go across the causeway, $3. Okay, that's what we paid to go across. And we came across and got to the stop sign, the original up there, and turned right. Directions Dad came down. We saw this little 10-foot road, and we turned into it. And we didn't see Dad at the time. We got out of the car, and we go, and you know what that is. And he looked at me and I looked at him and I said, oh, brother, what did we get ourselves into? But then we saw Dad coming down the road and he started laughing. And folks, you can't realize what it was really like. This was in June. Sanibel had the highest 1-minute mosquito count in the world. In the world. And that's, seriously, it was just unbelievable. Some of the pictures that you saw of the original, when we came down the street, it was like picture coming down the aisle right here, and you couldn't see left or right because of the Brazilian pepper and all the vegetation that was there, the palm trees, the buttonwoods. I mean, I didn't even know how to start. But we hired an engineer, and this was our first engineer. We had the plans for the original 16 acres of the roads were set up in the sewer lines, the water lines. And Dad felt that the straight lines didn't get it because if we saw a beautiful buttonwood, we made the turn. Well, the first engineer said he didn't like that. Well, that was the end of him. So he was gone, then we hired Johnson Engineering. But yeah, it was, Dad's philosophy is keep it original. Keep it the same. if you have a nice tree, keep it, or try to move it if we have to. So that's basically how we started developing the park. Just for kickers, before we start, where I continue, I want to ask right now, for all the people that have lived in the park or are now presently in the park, please stand up. Thank you. That's why the four of us can sit up there. We're actually not that nervous because we know so many folks. And I'll continue in just a second, but I want you to know that there are folks in the audience that have been here since 1965 living in the park. Okay? Hello, Jan Anderson. She's sitting right up in front. We have other neighbors that I haven't seen in years, the Burbages. They were here for a long time. Jimmy Anholt sitting out there, he and Betty are making sure we say the right things. They've been here a long time. There's been folks that have been here 50 years, 40 years. Sorensons, nice folks. They started out in a little trailer, went to a bigger one. Now they have a much bigger one.
I started camping.
Yeah, little bitty, yeah. Okay, so now we'll get back to the history of the park. As we started that first year, my brother went back to college in September, and Dan and I, see, that's how you guys got married in 64. Dan and I drove back up to Syracuse to go to Emily and Dick's wedding. So then that's the time we put in a mobile home, and Mother came back. Mother wasn't with us when we first started out those first few months. She was up north with basically our second family of Missy and Mark. So when we went to the wedding, we brought them back, and Dad and I, Steve stayed at school, and so it was just Dad and I those first couple of years. As you know, the Vietnam War was raging at the time, and I was considered 1A, so I had to do my thing. I joined the Navy and was in the service for 4 years, but would come back on leaves and still work in the park. But we started up in the front of the park. You saw a picture of our original office right there. And then what we would do was go road by road. We had no bulldozers. We had a fogging machine because the mosquitoes were so bad that when you would hit a root, the ground came up at you. And very serious. That's what it did. So we would fog some more, do some more work. And all with this, you saw a green tractor in the pictures. We call that Greenie. And that was my younger brother Mark that was on that. And that's all we had. It was we had a lot of pine trees in the park, and we had an old Jeep that we used to take down, driving down the road, put them on a pile. Where actually where my brother's house is right now, shove them up there and burn them. And lots of, not just a few pine trees, there were hundreds. And because the park used to be a tomato farm back in the early days. But one of the bad hurricanes, I can't remember which year it was, put salt water over it and it ruined the tomatoes, and that was it. So that ended the tomato farm. So now we're at the point where what are we going to use for water? You know, to supply our people with. We use well points. there was no IWA. Okay? Right? There was no Sanibel sewer system. Periwinkle Park had the first package plant in Lee County. We were able to, the county wanted us to have no septic tanks. So, and by the way, all the permitting was done through Lee County and the commission over there. So, once we were putting in the sewer plant, and I'm 18 years old, what do I know about, plumbing? It was called on-the-job training. You made a mistake, you fixed it. So now we had our sewer plant in place, we had water, and not enough of it, and we had our electric from Lee County Co-op. So we actually had our first unit come in October, November. Now, I don't know if I should tell you what we charged for the first unit from the people that were sitting there. We had an old card, and our rates were $3.50 a night. They're a tad more than that right now. just a little bit. So there was another picture there that showed a tiki hut. Okay. Well, we had to stop doing that because, as you all know, the pond fronds, they dry out. People cooked under them, and guess what happened? No more tiki hut. So we had 3 or 4 of those burned down, so we had to do that. So, as we kept developing, going, this took 2 or 3 years of being in the service. June and I were married in, when was it? 1969. And now, of course, Emily and Dick were married, and he was a plumber up in Syracuse. So June and I went to grade school together. Okay. June's sister is married to my other brother. So our families are pretty close. But he decided that he was making Air Force his career. So he went in the Air Force and was in for 21 years. So June and I got out of the service. I was married a week later, and I took June from a college town down to Sanibel. Okay. All I can tell you is that Dad and I were working like 7 to 7. And were there many young families on Sanibel and Captiva then? 0. So there were a few tissues being used for the number of tears. Because newlyweds, I'm working, I'm busy, she's not. I mean, you can imagine coming down to Sanibel. I mean, with the bugs, the humidity, and no traffic on Sanibel. I mean, we're talking during season. There was no traffic, nothing like this. People say, how old is a trailer park? And we say BC. And they say, well, no, it's before condo, before sunsets, before the first condominium. So June at one time said, I don't have enough to do, so she was a teacher. And so she started teaching at Cypress Lake. She was a phys ed major and found out she was 3 months pregnant. Well, that ended that, as you all know with your children. That's when our family started. Yeah, there's the first one sitting in the front row. My daughter Jennifer. Yeah. So, so when we brought her home from the hospital, again, I want you to realize to get from the car to where we were staying in this mobile home, mosquito netting. Yeah, mosquito netting over the bassinet to get her in the house. And unless you were here, you just can't realize what it was like. You would go to sleep at night if the screens were open here. That's all you heard. And then in the no-see-ums, we used to use a little coil called pick. We burned that, and it would do that. Yeah, Dick's daughter will tell you that's Karen. Karen, stand up. Stand up. That's Dick's daughter. So in 1972, okay, now we've been in business now 8 years. We needed to expand, and we needed more help. So Dad and Mom made a phone call to the Birdman over here, okay? And he said, "Dick, we need you." And that's when they came down, and you came an apartment, and we were building a Michigan home, right?
When it was today, in fact, right about now, 47 years ago, I got back to Syracuse from down talking with them and everything, got back to Syracuse, and had 18 inches of snow in the driveway. That was a Friday night. Saturday morning, we listed the house, sold it Thursday. Called my father up and said, "Rent me something quick."
So when they came down, basically we were doing our first expansion to the east. This was in 1972. The city of Sanibel was not formed yet, so we had to go to Lee County. We had to go in and get a zone change for 9 acres that we leased from Francis Bailey. So we had to go to the commission, and we brought the guys out here and showed them what we wanted to do, and Francis was with us, and if you know, Francis, back in those days, is the good old boys, and this was a Lee County Commission, and it was our ace to have Francis with us, because they knew him very well. So we were able to get a zone change for the 9 acres. So now, instead of having the 16 acres, now we had 25. And that's where Dick was so helpful, because at Periwinkle, when we did a project, we did it. We didn't hire it out. We had a couple of guys that worked for us, but we always did our own work. We put our own water lines in, we put our own sewer lines in, we did all the electric also. Back in those days, we every dime, most of the money that we made went right back into the park. So that's when we had the idea of splitting the 9 acres in half. Half of it went to mobile homes. The other half went to the RVs that you see on the roads, the big motor homes, the fifth wheels, even a two-man tent. We built our own restrooms. We put in our own lift stations. We rented the equipment. And let me tell you, when we went home at night, we didn't go dancing. Midnight on Sanibel, what time was it? 9 o'clock. You bet it. And it was still back then, because I would drive my brother crazy. We'd be out before June. And we'd be talking with people, and at 9 o'clock I said, I'm gone, brother. I went home and went to bed because I knew we had to get up and start working again around 7 o'clock. So in 72, we were able to expand. And as in any business, we needed more help. So we hired 2 more guys to work with us, maintenance people. Then we had more people in the office, and then more people cleaning restrooms. And we didn't have our birds yet, but it was real close. Okay, so now think of it as going over a couple more years, okay? We had a bird pond in the park. You saw the pictures of the park. And that bird pond was formed because we needed to fill from the pond in a very low area right next to it. So we had a drag line come in the park, dig out that bird pond, and just put it right next door. That's how the bird pond became in existence. And then, for some reason, we had a few ducks in there. And then when Dick came down, all of a sudden we started getting a few more ducks. And we had, Dick, why don't you go from there?
The best part was that when Dad was back in the 60s with the bird pond, it was really fun to see. We always wondered to see how the people nowadays at the Conservation Center felt about it, because we had roseate spoonbills, wood storks, flamingos, scarlet ibis, and everything in the park that we owned, that they were ours. And I think one time one of the wood storks got out, and Dad got the mosquito control helicopter, and they found it. But Dad sent me over to Miami one time to get more waterfowl, and the place we went to was closed, so we had a lot of birds in there. So I bought 1 bird, and then it just kind of escalated up to 450. While there, it was a little crazy. And then we thought, if I'm going to enjoy this as much with all the birds and the waterfowl in the park, then we started putting in the cages along the front that an awful lot of you people, most of all of the young people on the island, have grown up in the park. As we always say, it's one of the safest places to be, because more and more island people bring their kids down to learn how to ride bicycles on the side roads, and they're never going to worry about getting hurt or anything. And then about 25 years ago, one of the most wonderful ladies in the whole world came and absolutely fell in love with birds. And Miss Libby, as almost everybody in the room knows,
Libby, would you stand up?
oh, is she here?
There she is.
Libby got a double yellow at Amazon from us, and she absolutely, then there was absolutely no stopping it. We put more and more birds in the park, and now every day she's yelling at me too, no more. It was really fun, but Libby started the show, and 5 days a week, and then it got to be just a little too much, so we're doing it for 3 days a week. And anytime, like during season, we'll have 100 people there, and Libby just, all I get on this island is people saying, what a wonderful woman that does the show and everything else like that. It's just a lot of fun.
Can I interrupt here for just a minute? I said I was going to do that, right? These are great stories. I'd like to take us back a little bit.
Sure.
Because it's maybe not known how politically astute the Rich family was. We have a fire commissioner, a former mayor. Talk a little bit, if you would, about the political challenges to grow as you have grown.
Well, we can do that. We can continue back in '74 when Sanibel was zoned for like 90,000 people. And that's when the citizens got together and petitioned the state when it became a city. Okay, then everything was frozen for a little while until the city got organized. Actually, my father was one of the interim city managers back in those early days. And helped work on the original bike path. He was, if you knew Dad, it says, well, don't tell me we can't do it, let's just get it done. And that was Dad. So that was part of that. And then in 1982, well, let's go in 74. You folks remember when the gas crisis was? Okay. The park changed. People wanted to stay permanently. Okay.
Yeah, the trails.
The trailers. They wanted to keep the trailers there year-round. So then we found out that we started letting people do that, and we said, uh-oh, we don't have enough spots for the RVs now. So in 1982, we bought the Rutland property. You saw a picture of Uncle Clarence's house there. Just a quick factoid. Clarence's house was built in 1913. Clarence bought it in 1928 and lived to his death in that house 1982. And that's the one that you go visit down at the Historic Society down there. I will get to that, how the house got down there. But we had to go, when we purchased the west property, 6 acres, we had to go before the city. And this was difficult because it wasn't zoned for trailer park. So, can you imagine about a house like this was down there? The 5 councilmen, Dick was on one side of Ray Fenton, our architect, and I was on the other, and we're trying to explain to him what we want. And the council said, some of the councilmen said, no, this is what you're gonna have. And of course, sweat's rolling down my back, okay? And our architect rose his hand and said, we came here for 49 units, and that's what we're gonna get, or there's gonna be no vote. Well, geez. Dick and I are sitting there dying.
So the land was zoned, where if we got it, the whole front of it now where the bicycle area is, was all zoned 600 deep commercial. And we absolutely did not want any more commercial on Perry Road. So they wanted, leave the commercial in 29 sites. We wanted 60. We settled for 49 and no commercial, and
Yeah, and
that made them a little.
so the vote was, first commissioner, yes, second one, no, third one, yes, fourth one, no. Okay, who was the last of our city councilmen to vote? Francis Bailey. Someone in the back of the audience yells out, for God's sake, Francis, vote yes and get him the hell out of here.
We've been there 3 hours.
And he voted yes. So then, Porter Goss was one of the councilmen. He came up to me and he said, how would you like to be on the planning commission? And I'm going, geez. I said, well, sure, I'll give it a shot. So I was appointed to the planning commission for 4 years. And that was unique because Sanibel was experiencing growing pains, okay? And it was very difficult. We would have long and tough meetings. Then all of a sudden I said, well, maybe I'll run for council. And June looked at me and says, "What, you crazy?" So the first time I ran, I lost. Okay. We waited 2 more years, and I ran again, and I made it the second time. So I spent 12 years with the city. I was 8 years on city council. 3 of those years I was mayor. Okay. Now the mayor, just to let you know, still only has 1 vote. All the councilmen just have 1 vote, but the mayor just runs the meeting. Dick was very active in the Kiwanis Club, which he still is today. He started Little League. Dick started, how long were you in Little League?
Just 35 years. Running Little League. A lot of kids, a lot of great times. Yeah.
But understand that Junie and Emily were raising our families at this time. And there was no preschool. I mean, just that about. So, Junie, explain what you guys had to do for the preschool.
Well, I think the hardest thing was because all of the population was scattered, there weren't common activities or interests for people to come together. I think what I remember the best organization was men's
Here,
softball.
give her the mic.
Do I need the microphone?
Yeah.
Is it turned on?
Yeah, just keep it close.
The men's softball was very well organized. Everybody worked like dogs through the season. And when summer came, everybody went, yes. Now we hit the ball fields. Eventually, we got women's softball going. Because my field is recreation, it was easy for me to get involved in organized sports. I helped start, as soon as the city got a pool, we started the Sanibel Water Attack Team, the SWAT team. The first year we had 75 children, island children that were very interested in swimming. We did very well. My daughter Jennifer in the front row was swimmer of the year one year. Aaron Minch participated and David participated. So it was, I coached with Dick Noon. The elementary school was growing. When Jerry and I first came here, I think there were 60 students attending the elementary school. There are over 400 now. We started a program where every child that came to Sanibel Elementary was tested for swimming ability. And if they could not swim the length of the pool, they had swimming in their curriculum at the end of every day. Which, you live on an island, you have canals, you have the Gulf, you have the bay, you have swimming pools. So the nice thing is a pool on the campus of the school. So I would say some of my favorite years were teaching. I taught swimming here for 30 years. I did it as a volunteer most of those years. Jenny teaches swimming now. It's one of the most rewarding things you can do because those little kids think you're a goddess. and you make a difference. And every year, Jerry and I, when you read the paper, you'll see there's a drowning in the area somewhere. So it certainly is a very useful thing. But when Jenny was about 4 years old, we realized there was no preschooling on Sanibel. And Mary L. Goss, Judy Workman, Barry Fisher, Sue San Maria, myself, Emily was involved. We started a preschool that was actually the site of Bailey's General Store on the bay. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with where that was. That was the ferry, actually. I guess they delivered groceries there. That old building was given to us by Francis to use, and it was great, except when it rained. Then you were dashing buckets around like crazy to collect the rainwater so the kids wouldn't slip in there. But what a beautiful sight that was. And it was so homey for all the kids that attended there. So that was another way to bring people together. Jerry was talking about how I was 22 when I came here, and there really wasn't anybody to be friends with. And I remember going to Bailey's, and if I saw a young woman, the first thing I would say is, "Do you live here?" Because there weren't very many people here. And I think the women did not handle the conditions. I think the mosquito situation was so bad. And when the men worked as hot as it was and as difficult as the working conditions were, it made it very difficult on a marriage. So Dick and Jerry used to trim all the trees in the park. Emily remembers those days, what they looked like, the way, the hours that they put in August. Oh, she shut it out of her mind, she said. So, okay. But gradually, another big contribution was the Mariner Group. Brought several young couples from Ohio to develop Sanibel. If you're not familiar with Mariner, they did Periwinkle Place, they did Mariner Point, South Seas, and I would say there were maybe 12, 14 couples from Ohio that were all young, all about our age, all had children, all needed schooling, active PTA. So it just took a few years to get the ball rolling, and patience. Because Jerry told me he was taking this beautiful island in Florida, and I cried every night for the first year. So,
Just some of the other things that was really fun, what Jerry was saying was, when I first got here, Jerry had a party at his house for Em and I. He invited everybody on the island under 30, and all 10 of them came. And I said to Jerry, what time is the party? He said 7 o'clock. I said, 7? From where we were in New York, you didn't go to a party till 9. He said, 9? They'll all be home in bed at 9. So Sanibel Midnight has not changed since 1972. But I just wanted to see how much the whole area has changed. Emmy, when she came, she took over as bookkeeper, and 3 days a week we had to drive to the bank, because the closest bank to Sanibel was across the street from Sears. Edison Mall. That was the closest bank to Sanibel. So this, picture it now, there's a bank on every corner. No Summerlin. Gladiolas was 2-lane, everything. So it's really changed.
Well, you can picture this. No Middle Gulf Drive.
Right.
4 restaurants. 4. Okay? Like I said, no subdivisions, no condos, like I'm saying, no dunes, no Shell Harbor, no Gumbo Limbo, no anything. Now, I mean, no golf courses, nothing. No tennis courts. So, as we continued along, in 1982 is when we developed our last parcel, and that was the Rutland property. It was pretty unique because since we were pretty well established then, we had many of our residents, can I help you? Can I help you? When I said we do it ourselves, I would do electric with 10 guys, Dick would do plumbing with 10, Dad would do the water with 10 guys, and if the guys were too old to do anything, they were gophers, they would go everywhere. So we developed that whole area. Still, during the summertime, it stayed just as hot, just as humid as it is now. We'd be running a ditcher to put in our sewer line, okay? All of a sudden, Black Label beer cans would be flipping up in the air. Flying everywhere. Uncle Clarence had a bunch of palm trees in the back of his house that he sold for extra income. So he took a palm tree out, Black Label beer cans went in the hole. So that's when we were going along, all of a sudden, whoo! And we'd all have to stop because we're cracking up. we're laughing so much. They're the black label beer cans. So, once we got that area done, and another bird pond was put in, the same reason for fill, okay? Then, our expansion days were basically over, but everything else stayed the same. Our shell roads, our vegetation. It would have been easy for us to go in like they've done in town and just go and put in a few trees here and there. But again, that was not Dad's dream. If we could save a tree, we're going to save it. And that's what we did. We had before the garbage people arrived, we had our own garbage truck. We had to take, once we used that, we had to take it to the landfill. And to get filled for our roads, we cut a hole in the top of it. And on the way back on McGregor, we put shell in it and bring it back. And that's how most of our roads were started out. Then at Christmas time, we started many years ago of Santa Claus coming at Christmas time. And so each Christmas now, I mean, I don't think we missed maybe once because it rained. Santa Claus comes in the bucket of our front end loader, and we go all around the park, and we pick everybody up, and we meet right in the center of the park. And that's been one of our biggest traditions right there. And then we always sing Silent Night, and we lower Santa Claus down. And it's amazing because there's 400 people there, and all their grandkids, all their kids come up and have their pictures taken with Santa Claus. And that's one of our best traditions. Then, probably, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, one of our guests said, well, let's have a Mardi Gras parade. And I looked at Dick and go, well, sure, okay. So that progressed now. Yes, we're older, but you know what? We can let our hair down. So the park has Mardi Gras every year. We have everybody. We have a kazoo band and lots of people. What do they call it? Oh yeah, these ladies try to embarrass me every year. They're called the Mardi Gras. We always got to come up and get our picture taken. Jude loves it. So, and then we said, well, let's feed everybody. So then, not only do we have the parade, but the park puts on a picnic for everybody. And then that started to get overwhelming with the picnic. So we said, well, let's have Bailey's do it. So now Bailey's caters it for us. And that's basically our other best tradition that we have, besides Santa Claus, is our Mardi Gras parade. And it's really a whole lot of fun because it's our own people. That's what makes it so enjoyable. We're all having fun together. It's a great day. So Periwinkle is a unique park because it's not the park, it's the people in Periwinkle that make the park. And that's what makes it so special. I can guarantee you that of our residents, how many work at SCCF, how many work at the library, how many work at Ding Darling. My own mom had many hours at the library and at Ding Darling. So our folks, they volunteer quite a bit. They're again, that's the people in Periwinkle. They're volunteers and they want to help, and we encourage that. So it just really makes it nice. We were talking about how I was mayor, and I stopped doing that. I came home one day and I said, June, what do you think of me running for a third term? And she said, with what other wife? I got the point. So then I was always part of the fire department, back in when it was volunteer. Many years ago, we were getting so big. Can you imagine when I first came, 200 residents on the island, 200. Beach frontage was $100 a foot. How about that? That was something. So then, with the fire department, it was all volunteer, and we were getting more people and more people and more people, and we couldn't handle it anymore of the number of medical calls that we had. So that's when the volunteers ended and our professionals came on board. And we grew and grew, and so in I believe it was 96, one of the commissioners retired and I became a fire commissioner. And kind of been doing it ever since. And so now, just so you know, another factoid, if it's all right, we have 2 stations on the island, one up near Wolford Road and the main one here on Palm Ridge. We have close to 30 paid people. We have all of our people that we hire from the fire department, they're all EMTs or paramedics besides being a firefighter. They must be qualified because 98% of our calls are medical calls. And just to let you know that when you see that ambulance and the fire truck, they always go together because we don't know the seriousness of the call and how many people we're going to need. So when you always see that, we get these questions often. We don't know basically how many personnel we're going to need. And you can rest assured, sitting in this audience right now, that those people are extremely qualified. This last week, okay, 2 cardiac arrests, we saved them both. Saved them both. Our people saved.
Back in '72, a lot of us were, the fire department was all volunteers. So when you called the fire department, you got the fire bar, and all 13 guys would pick it up, and they say there's a fire here or there. But just so any of you remember it, this even long before my time too, if you ever go into the bait box, that was the old original firehouse, which was moved from the little park, the little county park right there before on Periwinkle. That slab of concrete there was the old firehouse, which was, and we had a red Ford van was our ambulance. And before I got CPR qualified and everything else like that, most of the people that had a heart attack saw me coming on the van. They said, "Oh my God, I'm dead," because I lost the first. I was the driver, but we lost the first 4 I was ever on. So they saw me. I was gone. They knew they were long gone. We had to stop the fire bar, as you called it, when they do that, because one of the things we started with Kiwanis was the Santa Claus run, which was a lot of fun. I started it in '73. I brought Wendy from Syracuse, where a lot of you have done it. Even Santa Claus will come to your house. You drop off presents at the firehouse, and we'll come to you. Didn't realize I was the only Santa, and I had a driver, but I didn't realize how big it was from South Seas down to Mariner Point. And at 11 o'clock, I hadn't got to Mariner Point yet, and they were calling the fire bar, wanting to know where Santa Claus was. We had to kind of quit the fire bar after that. I mean, That was a lot of fun. Right.
Right. So, getting back to Ferry River Park now. From the days when I first came over and saw where the chamber is, and on the left-hand side where the boat ramp is, was all the best shelling on the island because they were dredging that. All that land that you see when you leave the island, it's all dredged land from right out in the bay, right there. And most of it now is in conservation setting where they can't build on it. Up to now in the park, where we have 326 units, okay? We have 80 mobile homes. Those are the bigger units. We have 166 what we call park models, okay? Those are about 400 square feet with 300 square foot of a floor to go on it. And we have 80 sites for anywheres from a 2-man tent up to a $1 million motorhome. So when you come in to our park, again, Dad's vision is don't change this. You know, don't be concrete, don't be all asphalt. You will come in, the only asphalt you will see is it just in the very entrance of our park where you check in. From there, nothing has changed. Our shell roads, our vegetation.
Our restrooms.
Yeah.
Where's Red?
They've got a little just a quick humorous story. When Dad and I were building our first restaurant on the main street, we really didn't know what day of the week it was. And it happened to be on Sunday. Visiting priest came down, they came from Miami to say Mass. And he looked up at us and says, "Don't you guys know what day it is? Go change your clothes and get to church." So we had to do that. Church used to be right below the park instead of where the Catholic Church is now on Rabbit Road. So basically, there's your history of the park. We're not. What is our vision statement? We're not changing. You gotta like us for what we are, and that's it.
We have a couple of questions here, and then we're going to open it up for folks. I'll come out with a microphone, and you can ask some questions to these wonderful people. Can you talk, because at the village, our first building was the Rutland House from Clarence Rutland. You absolutely had it on your property.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that time and what happened?
Sure. We could talk. The Rutland House, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Well, when this was our third edition, and the Rutland House, like I said, Clarence had died in 1982, and you know where the shell shop is next door. His niece inherited the property. Her name was Snooky Williams. You know, and so when we got permission from the city for what we were going to do, we said, well, maybe the city would like the Rutland House. So as we were negotiating, we said, how about if you guys take the house? And by golly, they said yes. So his old barn is still there, somewhat. It's fallen apart. But all I can tell you is, I used to, when I first came down here, we met Clarence as our neighbor, and I would go over kind of just like what we're doing right here. I would sit in his little living room that he had, and I learned more about Sanibel and what he did just going over there, just trying to get a drink of water, trying to cool off. Clarence would sit there and have a black label beer, and I'd be drinking water. And if you go in the Rutland house, you go in the front door. Okay, the very first room to the right is where I spent a lot of time, a lot of hours just talking with Clarence and what he did. And his wife had died just prior to when we got there, so we never did know Clarence's wife. She died fairly younger. So the house was moved. It was the first time I believe anything was done like that, right straight down Perry Window.
12 o'clock at night.
Yeah, all the electric lines had to come down, trees were cut, and it was moved to where it sits right now. And then there was some damage to the house, but we had the volunteers, the carpenters, we had to replace a couple of windows.
Hammerheads.
Yeah,
Hammerheads, some of them
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Hammerhead.
And they really worked hard, and they did a great job. So there's really a lot of history in that house. I mean, I personally can go in there and stand there and smile, say, I was here. I sat in this house. I knew Clarence. We were good friends, and what unique about, even I told some of the volunteers, is the number of cats Clarence had. Yeah, the doors were always open, and he had 20 cats, and so they'd be running in and out all the time. So it was unique. And one day when we were working in the park, we heard a shotgun go off, and a rattlesnake was trying to eat one of the cats, and he hit it with both barrels. So and there was any rattlesnake left.
Then when traffic started, I used to love to go over and shoot the breeze with him and sit on the front porch. But after traffic started in the 70s, early, late 70s, you couldn't hear yourself talking anymore because the house was so close to the road. And so when we decided to work with the city and give it to them, we always remember at 12 o'clock at night, 12:01, it drove off the lot. We were celebrating because it was going to be useless to us because you couldn't live in it, and there because of the noise. And if none of you have ever been there, there is no closets in it, which is really interesting. Everything was a nail on the wall, and that's where you hung your clothes on. So.
It was about, everybody know where the Hucksters is. It was about 100 feet this side of the Hucksters, right
I know
there.
where the building is now.
Right, and just,
Bicycle building.
right, there's just a quick little driveway that went in. And his house is, if this is Prairie Window, his house is right where you are, Jerry, sitting right there. That's how close it was.
Do you have any final things you want to share? Any anecdotes, anything off the wall, anything funny, before I go out and take questions from the audience? Anything at all you want to share?
One of the things that I'd like to add, and Jerry's mother, Betty Mitch, was an extremely strong lady. And people often ask me, this is my 50th year on Sanibel, and the first thing people say is, I bet you've seen a lot of changes, and I bet you're really mad that there's so many people here and it's changed so much. And I came here because I married Jerry. He wanted to come here. He had a vision like his father did. Business was here. But I don't think I've ever felt like anybody should be excluded. And when Betty would work at the library, she told me that people would often come up and put a petition in her face and say, would you sign this? And she would shake her finger and say, if I signed every petition that was in my face, you wouldn't be here. She felt very strongly about that. And I admire that because people did come here when the conditions were very primitive. But they never, I don't think either Betty or Al ever felt like it was exclusive to them.
But you did have some petitions presented against your project.
Well, I can explain that. This was not with the city. This was when I explained that we had to go before the Lee County Commission with Francis. for some reason, there was a petition against the expansion of the trailer park, which we couldn't quite understand, because some of the people that signed it were in business like we were. It was a little disheartening. But when we were in the meeting, in the commission, the petition was brought forward and given to the county commissioners. And the county commissioner that represented us, and this is verbatim quoted, said, "Francis, what's this all about? I was out there." And Francis again said, "I'll be damned if I know. These are good people. I have no idea why this petition is saying this." And the commissioners voted in favor of it 5-0. So after the vote, a single hand went up. It was my mother. The head of the commission said, "Mrs. Minch, what can I do for you?" And you could hear a pin drop in the room. And she said, "Is that petition public record?" And he said, "Yes, ma'am. May I have a copy of it?" She said, "Yes, ma'am." When we were standing outside the door, a lot of our business friends came up and said, "Well, I didn't know what I was saying." So June said, "You signed it." And that's how tough my mother was. She didn't forget that. I mean,
If she was alive today, she could tell you everybody that signed it. It was really fun because afterwards, one of the restaurants came to the park, wanted us to sign the petition so they could have liquor license. My dad and mother just started laughing. Signed petitions.
So mother, you know, Dad, Dick, and I, we went out there and we worked hard, but I have to say this: behind every hard-working guy is a hard-working woman. Yeah, Junie and Emily and Mother, when we ever, you just felt down and you felt tired, they picked us right up and said, "Let's go, let's get going." So Mother was quite a woman.
The funniest part though was she would be up at the office, there would be trailers lined up on Periwinkle, and there she was checking somebody in, just worried about talking about seashells. And some of the folks here tonight work for us and stuff like that. And it was really difficult when we had to fire her. You can do anything you want, but you can't work in the office. That back when 1 or 2 trailers were coming in, and not 10 or 15 trailers.
So let's give them a round of applause. So how about some,
9 o'clock?
how about some questions? We have questions over, and I'm sure there are going to be a bunch. And we want you to stay by too. We have wine, we have desserts for you. So let's get some questions going.
Ann Yarnell here, you know where I am in the corner of the park. Could you tell me about the ditch behind my place that runs into the river? It's a fairly deep ditch. I've had river otters in it. How did that ditch come to be?
Oh, the drainage? Yeah, that was basically the city was having us do that for drainage. What she's talking about is where the present day sewer plant is. Okay, when we had our sewer plant, and it started to get overloaded, when Shell Harbor was built, the city put in their plant, That wasn't the city, it was a developer, Shell Harbor, and we hooked into that because they didn't have enough sewage to run it. And then when the city took it over for drainage, we have a ditch that actually goes out to the Sanibel River, is what she's talking about. It's strictly for drainage.
Part of Donnex Street flows into the part of that, and that flows all down through there. It drains a lot of the water off of the new storm system that they put in up on, for Perrywood. All works its way down through there.
Thank you very much. I am a docent at the museum and I learned a lot tonight that I didn't know. I just want to also thank you very much for Periwinkle Park. When my husband was growing his business and I was in love with Periwinkle Park, I would come down by myself in my 20s with 2 little boys, pitch a tent. I always got that site close to the where the mailroom is, kind of, but I could listen to the pump of the water. I always felt safe being at Periwinkle Park. June, thank you for the SWAT team, both boys and Jennifer. They're in their 40s now, and they swam with you. Thank you all for making not only Periwinkle Park the place it is, but making Sanibel still a wonderful place. I love it there. Thank you very much. I feel blessed.
Thank you.
One other funny story. When I moved down here, my dad was, a lot of you know, he was a little strict. And, just a little bit. And he did not believe anybody that if your hair came down and touched your shoulder. Absolutely not. He couldn't come in. That was back in the 70s when everything was going on in the heart. I got here, we talked him into at least getting the hair down to the collar. Right. So once you got your hair to the collar, it was okay. But there were many times when people come in and for some reason Jerry and I were communists. We were probably the funniest one was I was working in the office and the guy came in and he said, "Jesus Christ had long hair." I says, "Yes, sir," and he did not stay here in this truck. He had a dog, and he learned about how difficult it is to have a dog in a campground. And picture our help having to answer the phone, say, "Yes, we do have room, but we do not allow dogs or long hairs." So, that's the way we answered the phone all during the 70s. It was quite different back then. Yes?
I am a Sanibel resident, but I just want you to know that everybody in this community is envious of your life in Periwinkle Park and the friendships and community you have. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
That's the question
We want
back
all
here.
of us to be involved all the time, so that's why, Jerry and I both, and the girls both got involved in everything we did on this island, because we love this place. Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate the tradition that you have set in this community, a family working together. And I don't know if Gator Utilities rings a bell with you, but that was my dad and my brother who came down, putting utilities, lift stations and so forth. I was talking with my brother on the phone yesterday, and it often comes up. He says, "How's the family doing?" And I just mentioned a few things that you guys are doing really well. And he was really interested in the Mardi Gras and so forth. Sorry, he couldn't be a part of that. But Dave is doing a great job of carrying on your tradition. And we appreciate your family and your kids, your grandkids. They are just wonderful, and thank you so much for what you've done.
A lot of people are always asking us, "Do you ever plan on selling the trail his son is behind him and he's ready to go to work anytime. So for the next 20 or 30 years or 40 years, it's covered.
My name is Adina Lessig, and we have a lot of friends in the park, artists and singers and writers. It's wonderful. But I do have a question. You mentioned that you had trailers and RVs. I'm curious as to how the beautiful mobile home started. Did someone buy land and bring in a builder? Did you have models that you sold? How did that work?
Well, sure, we can answer that easily. Basically, what did I do, lose it? Okay. We had a couple of mobile homes come in very early, real early. Mother and Dad's was a mobile home, and then we had a couple named from Pennsylvania. Can you believe it? I can even remember their name. Their name was Buell Franklin. Yeah. And then when June and I were married and came down, we put in third mobile home. So when basically people wanted to stay there permanently, okay? And this was even before 1974 and the gas prices began. So we split the park. We said, all right, this section is going to be for the big mobile homes in the original park. Then, when we bought the 9 acres from the Bailey family, we again said, okay, this is before the park rentals even were there. Half of it was going to be for the RVs, and a third of it was going to be for the mobile homes. And that's how we did it. We wanted to keep the permanent residents could have their mobile homes. We did not sell them. We advised people of dealers where they could go get them. So, and even to this day, we don't have a fee for people that want to bring in a mobile home. We don't get a percentage of that. We don't, we have dealers that we trust. And they know that, and they don't want to break that trust. So if we send them there, they know our rules, our regulations, as well as we do. So it makes it easy for us.
We have a question back there. Thank you. First of all, I want to know, what were the 4 restaurants that were on the island? There were 4
Okay, I can.
restaurants.
As you know, before, way back, a lot of people knew when it was Scotty's Pub, but it wasn't Scotty's Pub. It was called Reisinger's. Okay, now that's where Jack Miranda is. Okay, across the street was a small little place called Jack's Place. Okay,
Harbor House.
That became Harbor House. And then as you go down the Perry, we go where the Fish House was. Well, it was McTee's even before that. Yeah, it was called, there we go. It was Golden Sands. The Golden Sands, because I remember I was an 18-year-old and drinking was 21, and I used to go in there and I'd talk to the bartender and says, look, just give me a Coke. So that, and then the other one was the Coconut Grove. Perry Whipple and Tarpon Bay. That basically was the four restaurants that we had. Yeah.
But if you were here in '72, Memorial Day weekend, Labor Day weekend was always that Monday. Then on Tuesday, all of Periwinkle, except for those 4 restaurants, would go to Twilight. Because everyone then, because back then it was all mom and pop, running all of the shops, stores that were open. They shut down, they all went to North Carolina or Europe, come back about the 15th of October, start taking the plywood down, open back up around the 1st of November. So basically all there was Jimmy's gas station, 4 restaurants, maybe a shop here or there. But the rest of it all the periwinkle was just nothing but violence.
One more. Is there a CD available for sale with these photographs?
Is it? I didn't hear that.
Is there a CD?
Here.
We're actually,
Yeah,
we're actually recording this program tonight, and it will be for sale at the village. I don't know, we can talk about that, guys, right? Some of your pictures, whether they're gonna be part of it, but we are recording this.
Right.
Are there other questions? Yeah, right up here.
From the time that you started the park, how long was it before you were able to take in your first camera?
Well, we started in basically June, and I would say end of October, November, we had a few, we had just, like I said, when we started in the front, we had a few sites that were available. And then we could keep taking more and more as we kept developing. It's too bad, if we'd have known a little bit better, we could have, some of the pictures in there, we could, of course, that's the Swans. Dick's favorite picture right there. Those are just campsites around, but there is a picture in there that shows you the park itself, and it's very undeveloped.
There's the very first entrance.
Yeah, I see those. Those were pine tree logs that I put down. And
There's one of the teeth.
yes, right there, and that hasn't changed. Really, it really hasn't changed, except there's, yeah. Again, there's your mobile homes. That's in that second edition. Yeah, there it is, right there. That's. But it's difficult when it's going that fast.
I wanted to know what happened to the original campground that didn't take children, and I also want to know how it is that you've managed not to have any competition.
Well, I can tell you, I can answer that easily. Loggerhead Cake is now the campground. It was bought out by condominium. We tried to buy it, and she wouldn't sell it to us because most of the people that went there, even though it was right on the beach, came to our park. And yeah, it was a little bad blood. She didn't like us a whole lot. So that's what happened at the park. What was the second part again?
The second part of the question was how have you avoided having a competitive campground on the island?
Well, when we became a city, and the owner of the park was mayor, he made an ordinance that said. That's not what happened.
There was a person that wanted to open up another park.
A mobile home park.
And it was very interesting because it's where City Hall is now. They own the property and they wanted to put in a park down there. And there was a lady on the island, I cannot remember her name, but she made one call to Washington. And from that one call to Washington, down to the state, down to the county, within 2 days, that park was right out the window. I don't remember, I can picture the woman as plain as day, I can't remember her name.
But the zoning,
She had some authority.
when we became a city, it was all, the zoning was put in place. Okay, and there was no property zone for trailer park. Even us, in the eyes of the city, Periwinkle Park is a lawfully existing use. Okay? We're basically zoned for about 40 home sites. Will that ever change? Not as long as I'm alive. Not as long as he's alive.
We have a question over here.
My question is to Dick. You have lots of birds to the right of your house. Are those rescue birds or just your hobby or?
A lot of the birds that are in the park, in the show, they're tame. A lot of those were rescue birds, and some that I did breed and bring down there. But all the ones down at my house are all breeder birds. Back in the 80s and everything, I used to do real well. A lot of my birds that I have there now haven't bred for years because a lot of them are, I've been doing this 42 years, and a lot of them are in their 40s. And I don't know how they are, so I used to be hand feeding 40 and 50 babies a year. And now we don't do any of that hardly anymore. Most of the birds that are down there are either too old or don't breed anymore, but I don't have the heart to get rid of them, so they're gonna stay with me as long as I'm going. It's a gentleman over here, but.
I've got a question right here, and then I'll take the mic.
You guys go ahead, sure.
And actually, I don't have a question. I'm sure there are others.
Sure, Mike.
And,
Very close to your lips.
Can you hear it?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sure there are others here who came to the park before we did, but we came in 1967. We had a tent on 6 West. We had an alligator, and we looked all day at Dean Darling for alligators. We couldn't find one. Found out there was one right in the, little river right beside us. But the mosquitoes we had 2 night reservations. The mosquitoes were so terrible that you took your hand and raked them off your arm. I got in the shower, I soaked up, I ran out of water. I had to send my daughter back to the campground, give me another dime for it. So, we came then in 67. My husband retired sometime later, and he says, Gail, we need to go to Florida and figure out where we want to go for the winter. I said, oh, Bob, we don't have to go anywhere. I know exactly where I want to go. Oh, no, we have to go to Marco. We have to go to Naples. We have to go to St. Pete. We have to, and we did. And guess where we ended up? At Periwinkle Park. And you are right. The people there, the community that is there, is like no place else you were able to find. We love it. Yay.
At one time, they did an alligator count on the island, and that they could find at night. And they came up with 4 or 5 alligators that they counted in the river. And I said, got the guy, he was in the park, and he was telling us about the 4 or 5 alligators. I said, come on with me just a minute. We went down to lot 75, and there were 7 alligators. So there's all, we are kind of a nature preserve.
Can you talk about mosquitoes? And when I first came in '85, the DC-3 flew over our house, and I thought the Japanese were attacking. And how did they get rid of it? Didn't they?
Right.
Yeah.
How did they get rid of the mosquitoes? You can talk about that.
A lot of the folks don't remember, but they used to fly over all the time with DC-3s right over the top of the pine trees. So a lot of times the guys would get back to mosquito control and have to go up in the engines and pull the pine needles out of the engines that they had there. But when you see a DC-3 coming across the top of the trees, you really start to panic thinking he's going to crash because there's smoke coming out everywhere.
It scared me to death the first time when I was running a tractor and this DC-3 came about 20 feet above us, and I jumped right off the tractor and scared myself. But the second part of your question, how they get rid of them, with mosquito control, you will rarely see the DC-3s anymore. They kill the mosquitoes before they hatch with larvicide. If you see the helicopters with the big arms out, just go, thank you. Because that's, I mean, we couldn't survive here if those mosquitoes stayed like that. Our mosquito control did a great job with the larvicide.
A lot of the dunes, where the dunes is now, used to be all ditches and everything. They dug the ditches and stuff like that. Mosquito control did a lot of them to get the fish to eat the larvae, and Susan did. But then they changed it all, and now big lakes are there and everything else like that. So we do eliminate a lot of them. when the trucks still come around and the helicopters are, thank God for the helicopters.
We have one more question
So-
here.
Sure.
Go ahead.
You have great birds there, but where did the lemurs come from?
1972, a gentleman came over and he said, it's so cold up north, I've got these 2 lemurs. Would you mind watching them for me? It just started from there. Now we've got,
Big mistake.
we keep adding cages all over. Like I tell everybody down in my breeding building, every time you see a crack in the floor, it's another expansion. And, right now we've got 19 lemurs and about 20 other primates of different kinds that we have.
Just a quick, I know we're probably running out of time, but just a quick thing on one of the birds. Where the cages are, where folks come up and see them. A lady was staying at a motel next door. She just fell in love with this bird. We came back one morning and the bird's gone. Okay? So, Libby can remember this. Was not a happy camper. So we immediately put it out to all our friends to watch out for this bird. And you're not going to believe this, but she's in the airport with the bird and to buy a ticket. Use the debit card, okay? All of a sudden, somebody told somebody that they saw this bird. We got to her debit card, found out that she was going to Chicago. We got her, a person in the park was an assistant DA.
She was at the airport.
Right. So we found out her address. They sent Chicago police over to her address. They knock on the door, opens it up, there's the woman and the bird. Boom, there go the handcuffs. You're under arrest.
The cop said the guy in Florida wants his bird back.
Yeah. So the bird flew all the way up there. We had a niece that was going to college up there. They took the bird to a vet. We had to pay the vet to get it ready to ship back. And we couldn't prosecute the lady because we wanted the bird back. So there was an arrest warrant put out for her in the state of Florida if she ever came back. So that bird flew up to Chicago and back, and we got the bird back.
The double yellow head, Woody, he's still in the park, isn't he? He made the national magazines of this woman that was amazing. Bird Talk magazine had a story all about her and how and that's the hardest part. In the park, we believe everybody is good people until you get something like that. And that was after that. Then we had to start locking everything, locking cages, and doing everything else like that. Before that, it was everything was open. And
The thing is, don't mess with Libby's bird.
We have one last question on this side over here.
You've touched on this a little bit about these shell roads in the park. Most of the neighborhood around you, due to pressure from the owners there, have started paving their roads. Have you ever gotten any pressure from anyone to pave the roads in the park? And if so, what is your response?
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. That's right.
We love the speed bump.
Right. We keep getting, we're always gonna have the sand roads. The hard thing to say is, people have been pushing and saying, yeah, we want that, but the hardest thing to say is that once you come through the front gate of the park, democracy ended.
We can tell the people of next
Newspapers always, we've got copies of it, I didn't take pictures of it here, but we have it, it's called the Kingdom of Minstrels.
When you walk to the beach, you want to feel sand in your toes, and that's going to stay just like that. It makes us work twice as hard when it rains. We have to regrade our roads all the time, but it's Sanibel. We just look at people and say, come on, We're not gonna have asphalt. We're not gonna have a concrete. It's Sanibel. And if you don't like us, there's the highway.
Watching the pictures go by, and the little one with the old office that we had. I was just sitting there picturing and thinking back about it. Back years ago, Mr. Hugo Lindgren, who built Shell Harbor and built the sewer plant, he's in there talking to my dad, trying to sell him the sewer plant and all the pipe that's in the ground for Shell Harbor for $95,000. Jerry said, I am absolutely not going to be a sewer plant engineer. But that, just picture that from years ago, $95,000, we could have been running the sewer plant on Saturday.